So that's why we're so grateful for the hydro system. I think quite literally that Western Montana would not look the way it looks without that resource, without that affordable power. And
Mhm.
keeping that into the future is really, really critical. So that's why we spend so much time communicating with our members and working through policy that protects our access to that hydropower.
Welcome back to DAM, the official podcast of Northwest Hydropower. I'm your host, Austin Rohr, and I manage all things communications here at Northwest River Partners. Regular listeners of the podcast will know that we've spent a good deal of time talking with our friends to the east of the Cascades here in Washington. However, today's guest comes to us from the Rocky Mountains of northwestern Montana, and we're thrilled to share her perspective with you. I'm also personally thrilled because Katie played a big role in helping guide and shape our organization when Kurt and I first began working here 4 years ago, and in many ways, this podcast is the result of building such a strong foundation for our organization. So, Katie, thank you for being on, and maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about you and what you do and how you wound up in public power.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Austin. I'm just really, really excited to be here. You guys are doing a great job with this podcast and just continually talking about all the benefits of hydropower. And hey, we're just happy to be represented coming from Western Montana here. Uh, you know, I I didn't always think I was headed for the utility world. I have to be honest. I don't know that that's, when people are growing up thinking of what they want to be. I don't know that we think of of the electric utility industry. But I really have found my home in public power. I mean, as you know, this is just such a great way to serve a community and a region, and I really, really just love it. Um, I was, my background, my career is really in public affairs and communications. That's what I was trained in, um, and got my degree in business marketing from Montana State and my MBA from University of Montana. So both of the Montana colleges over here, um, and and enjoyed really a sort of varied career in public affairs. Most recently, before joining Flathead Electric, I was the marketing director here at our local community college, and that was just a really fun experience as well. Um, and when I was approached about Flathead Electric, I thought, gosh, I don't know, the community college world is pretty fun. It's pretty fun and it's pretty varied, and I'm working with all these really extraordinary instructors and people from really all over the world on these different things that we're teaching these kids, and college students they're fun and they kind of keep you young and it's exciting. We have a really thriving community college here, and I thought, I don't know about electricity. I'm not sure that's going to really keep me excited and engaged, and boy, I'll tell you what, I was wrong. uh, so I made that leap just a little over 7 years ago and started at Flathead Electric in the communications realm. Um, and really just right away figured out that there's so much more to this industry than initially meets the eye. And I don't think any of us are at risk of being bored anytime soon. So really have enjoyed just getting to know what it's all about and working to keep our members' power affordable and reliable. There's a lot that goes into that. So
Yeah, it takes you by surprise. It certainly does. It's I think it what you're saying echoes a lot of people in that you don't really necessarily plan to end up in this space, but for people that are trying to figure out what they want to do and don't know, it's a great place to end up. And yeah, it's funny. You'll talk about what you do for work with people, and sometimes you see them kind of go like, they're trying to figure it out and they're trying to understand, like, what are you talking about with energy and what about dams and hydropower and this and that? And then, as you kind of start talking about all the different things that we have to do, it's like, oh, that actually does sound pretty interesting. But, at first, that's not the impression you necessarily get when you think about it from an outside perspective. But maybe you could take me through what kind of a typical day looks like for someone being in your position. What is being kind of in a community relations role at a co-op look like on a day-to-day?
Sure. And I might take a step back and talk just specifically about one facet of what I do in community relations or oversee, and that's the communications function, which was, again, that's kind of where I came from. And so that's my bread and butter and something I'm really passionate about, and something that I feel is becoming just increasingly important in the public power world, especially because, to your point, Austin, it is these are really complex topics that we are trying to educate our members on. And that initial, just talking about what you do, that initial response of, gosh, I'm really not sure I understand. I'm not really sure I understand why we'd need communications in the utility world. I think that we've really seen a shift toward the importance of communications in our industry. Because it is very difficult to help people understand why they should care about something like hydropower, right? I mean, the end user, to fully grasp why they should stay aware of these issues, why they should be, taking some of their limited time and energy to learn a little bit more about these issues and how they really do ultimately impact their day-to-day lives. That takes a really strategic communications effort to get people to that point. And so that's I guess where I would start in talking about what the day-to-day looks like is, we've done a lot of work at Flathead Electric to be more strategic in how we talk to our members, to be more strategic in how we brand ourselves as their trusted energy advisor, how we engage with them on certain topics, so that when these things come up where we do need them to take some action or to get a little bit more involved, we've sort of built this baseline or this foundation that we can work from. And I think that we're uniquely situated to do that as utilities in the Northwest, because we have such amazing resources. We really have been able to become partners in our members' lives, in their homes and their businesses. They rely on what we serve them as members and customers of the public power industry. And so it's just taking that next step to really engage and remind them of who we are and how we can benefit them. And that's what we try to do every day, is just continually be engaged, involved, in front of them, and moving that narrative forward on the communication side. Other functions that when we talk quote community relations, I think that can be a lot of things, but what it looks like at Flathead Electric, we also have the energy services department under community relations, and they're really the folks that are outreaching every day or are serving as a resource for our members on anything that they need related to their energy usage. So whether it's energy efficiency questions or rebate programs, encouraging conservation efforts, we're doing that every day out of that department. We also just recently brought in a distributed energy resource specialist to manage our demand response programs and look at different options for what makes sense for load management and other distributed energy resources in the context of keeping our distribution grid reliable and affordable. And so that's part of the energy services mix too, right? We want members to reach out to their utility before they invest in solar projects on their home, so that we can talk through what that looks like for them and make sure that they're making a sound investment that makes sense in the context of what our rates are going to do in the future. And they're looking at potential ways to partner with the utility and really become a grid partner. I view that as a really important part of the future of energy services. So that's some of what we're doing there. We also have got the key, we call it key members. We're a co-op. So a lot of folks refer to this as a key accounts function, but we really call it key members. We're a little bit unique at Flathead because we're not in a competitive utility situation. We serve a electricity to everybody in our area. But what we really focus on that key member function is, again, really communicating with the member about the value that we can bring to them as their utility, and how we can work together in the future to make sure that our grid stays reliable and affordable for everyone. And that's kind of what that key member function is about. And then lastly, I also under my umbrella have got the government affairs function, which we're getting more involved in public power. There's such a spotlight on the energy industry right now from a policy perspective, both federal and state, and being increasingly part of that conversation is really important for our industry. So as a relatively small co-op, we're figuring out what makes the most sense for us and how we get involved there and benefit our members to the best of our ability from the government affairs side of things as well. So day in the life.
It sounds like a busy day. Being in that role where you're able to be engaged with your members on a regular basis and really kind of be on the ground, and then be able to take that to sort of the government affairs side and be able to, kind of have the firsthand account to share with elected officials. I imagine that's got to be a really good angle to have on it, as opposed to somebody just kind of going in there, not really having as much of that connection, or maybe understanding, what not just the co-op needs, but, I guess what the actual co-op, being everybody, needs.
I think that's probably one of the things I like most about this role, is that it's hyper focused on the member and what's the best for the member at the end of the day, and what the member experience is like, how they're hearing from us, what they're seeing from us. That's really most of what this role is about, is managing that. And you're right, being able to take that and go to the next step and really start to be involved in forming policy that shapes what our future looks like. Having that perspective is really impactful, to go in there and say, here's the end user, here's how this really shakes out. It's really not public power and public policy in general. There are a lot of parallels there. The decisions that we're making in public power are really focused on the end user, and it's the same way in government. So I think there are a lot of parallels to draw, and we have a really important story to tell on the policy setting side of things. So yeah, I think you're exactly right.
And you do come with that marketing communications background, like we talked about, and I guess maybe you could describe kind of what that transition is like, going from maybe that side of things to going into more government relations or community relations, and kind of branching out into some of these other areas. There's obviously going to be a lot of overlap, but I'm sure that there's some differences as well.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, I'm not able to be super objective about communications. My opinion is that it is sort of the foundation with which a lot of our business should be built on. If you're not able to effectively communicate with any of these stakeholder groups, right, your members, your legislators, federal delegation, if you don't have that foundation of solid communication to bridge gaps and to bring people to common understanding and to find common interests, then I don't feel like we can accomplish any of the rest of what we're trying to do. So I feel very fortunate. I'm grateful that was where my career started. But I'll tell you, that's just naturally how I'm kind of geared, is toward communicating with folks first. But again, I'm not able to be objective, but I think it's critical. Critical. And so that made it sort of an easy transition into some of these other areas, because I've been so focused on communicating, and it's not just pushing out a message. That's kind of the marketing piece, but the way that we really approached it is attempting to have a two-way conversation with our members. And thankfully, technology has given us the ability to do that pretty easily. We have a lot of tools where we're gathering feedback from our members, whether it's through surveys or through, we've got kind of point of contact, quick feedback on different issues. For example, we developed an outage texting solution years back. And the last text message that they get is, how was this service for you? And so we get that immediate feedback right when they've used this tool. And then we try to keep that two-way conversation going. So we're releasing, the communications team is about to release another iteration of that tool, but it's in direct response to what we heard from our members. And that's how they'll communicate it is, okay, we heard you. Here's some of what you told us you wanted, and here's how to use it. So again, I think it's just that foundation of communication to do all of the things is really important. And it, we see that it drives better results for the co-op and for our members when we're having that communication as the base.
Yeah, I mean, I think, people hear the word communication and there's a million different ways you can try and contextualize it, but ultimately, anytime that we're talking about trying to further anything forward, we need to be able to communicate, right? So it is really foundational and fundamental. And, there are a lot of utilities, it seems like, that are kind of picking up on the importance of that. And then you see a few that maybe aren't quite as gung-ho about it yet, but hopefully, that value can be expressed through maybe some of their neighbors and we can kind of spread the word. I mean, I'm not objective about it either, so it is what it is. Yes, but well, I think it's
we are the gung-ho ones, aren't we, Austin?
That's right. Somebody has to be. Yes. We have to be hydropower advocates over here, but I also have to be a good comms advocate in general too. So,
well, really, ultimately, it's all about that, right? I'm still, I mean, that might be where kind of where my career started. It was my 15 years kind of just focused on just communications before branching into some of these other areas. But that's ultimately still what I'm doing every single day is communicating with different groups. I mean, it's just different groups. we're still finding ways to effectively communicate with those groups. A lot of the legislative work that we're doing it's just an expansion of communications. So
I've looked, a little bit, obviously, in, whether it's, preparing for the podcast today or doing research in the past for other work that we do here. The Flathead service territory is fairly large and covers some pretty good ground. And I would imagine, as you're getting to kind of really interact with that community and with those members, that there are some kind of different groups there. So it might not be an easy question to answer, but what is the Flathead community like?
Yeah, you're right. We're the largest co-op in the state of Montana. When you look, regionally or nationally, we aren't necessarily huge, but we've got just over 57,000 members. I think 76,000 meters. So we are a fairly large service area, and we do serve some really diverse areas. So the Flathead Valley, which is kind of it's where we're headquartered, and kind of the central location, has a couple of different communities that have really different needs. We've got Whitefish, Montana, which is a resort ski town. We've got Kalispell is kind of the central hub where a lot of the business and industry is. We've got Columbia Falls, a little bit more of a blue collar based community, but thriving, wonderful community there, and adjacent to Whitefish area as well. We've got down to like the Flathead Lake communities, Big Fork and Lakeside. So there's really some diversity. And then we also serve Libby, Montana, which was traditionally a logging community, and very much more rural than some of the other communities we serve. But I think there are some similarities in that most people who live here, they just love Montana. They love, what it offers in terms of being able to step outside your door and recreate. They love having all of this freedom to explore all of our available public lands. And a lot of the kind of the fabric of our communities is built on that. And with that, we also have seen tourism become a major part of our economy here in the area as well. But we still are rooted in some of those traditional things that really built us in terms of logging industry and the agricultural industry, and now we're seeing some shifts into really some strong manufacturing in our area, and a little bit more focus on the tech world too. So yeah, it's a really unique and special area. Absolutely beautiful. If you haven't visited Northwest Montana, then not sure what you're waiting for. It seems like everyone else is. and it's kind of a fairly well kept secret, I think, sometimes, but it's a pretty wonderful area. We are seeing a lot of growth, I will say that. All of the areas that we serve really are seeing some pretty tremendous growth, which has created some challenges for us here. But yeah, it's a very, very special place to live.
Yeah, yeah. It does seem like, especially as COVID allowed for a lot more remote work and, people kind of changing maybe where, their priorities or what they want out of life or whatever, that they migrated maybe out into some of those areas more and, created some challenges. How has that changed the landscape of things for not only, for the area, but for the co-op specifically?
Yeah, it's challenging. We as the co-op, as we kind of look to the future and some of the challenges the region is facing, resource adequacy challenges, whether it's capacity or transmission, we're really in a situation where we're having to plan for a lot of growth. We're fortunate in that, but that comes with challenges. How do we plan for that growth? When we've got people moving into the area, we expect load growth with some of the policy decisions that are being made. And yeah, it's challenging. I mean, we've had certainly supply chain challenges, like everyone else, difficulty getting transformers to serve that growth, concerns about how we keep rates low in the future. There's a lot of focus on what that looks like into the future. And I think we've done a good job as a utility of setting ourselves on the path to plan for a lot of it, but it's something we will be keeping an eye on for a long time here.
Yeah, yeah. And as I understand it, you mentioned going to college in Montana, everything. You've pretty much lived your whole life in Montana. Is that correct?
I have. Yep. I was born in Kalispell. I am a third generation Flathead Valley. Uh, my grandpa ranched all over the state of Montana, and then ultimately landed here with his family ranch. And then my sister and her family and my mom still live on what's left of the final house area that my grandparents had here in Kalispell. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have lived here my whole life, and then of course left for college, but came back because this is where I want to raise my family as well. So yeah, I've been able to see all of this transition and all of this change, and so much of what comes with change is really wonderful, right? I mean, our towns are thriving, but we also have become so attractive to so many people that we're really struggling with housing prices here. I mean, we're in a housing crisis in Northwest Montana, frankly. It's really, really difficult to live here and afford a house here for folks. So that's created some major crunches for business and industry, because it's very difficult to find workers right now, because folks are having to leave if they can't afford to buy homes here. So we're just trying to balance that as a community. How do we make sure that we can still serve the needs of our community, that we still have reasonably priced jobs, reasonably priced homes for folks, so that we can continue to live here and really enjoy, again, that fabric of what makes this such a special place to live. And I mean, yeah, it's a challenge right now, I have to be honest. There's a lot of discussion about what that looks like in the future here in Kalispell and Whitefish, and we're not quite sure, but we're working toward solutions. And I think that's ultimately part of why I feel all of us here at Flathead Electric feel so impassioned about keeping our electric rates low. Is that's a we use a lot of electricity in Montana. It gets cold. Our heating load is significant, and it's really, really hard for a lot of the members who we serve to have any sort of an incremental increase in power costs. So that's why we're so grateful for the hydro system, which I really think has helped this area become what it is today through reliable, affordable power. I mean, that's at the base of everything we all do, right? And keeping that into the future is really, really critical. So that's why we spend so much time communicating with our members and working through policy that protects our access to that hydropower. It's critical to us in the future.
Certainly. And I definitely I want to touch a lot more on that and explore that topic. One thing I do want to do is maybe for context also, try and give people an idea. I imagine, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this that haven't gotten to take a trip out there ever and see it. And I'm even willing to admit that I myself have not actually gotten to see that area, although I'm going to try and change that in the next few months maybe. But maybe for people who don't understand, first of all, kind of what that lifestyle looks like, being in that area, being somebody who's born and raised in Montana, and what makes it so special, so unique, not just the area, but also what you get to do and what you get to experience out of life being in that area, and maybe also how things like affordable electricity or having access to the benefits of some of those things might also kind of make that a possibility as well.
I would describe the lifestyle in Montana as work hard and play hard. I've been fortunate in my career to travel a lot of different areas, and I consistently kind of just come back to that. Montana is home to some of the hardest working people that I have found anywhere. We a lot of us just kind of grew up that way. You have to, pull up your bootstraps and get to work. And we're really, really good at that in Montana, because a lot of the lifestyle is challenging, right? So you work hard and you get through it. On the business side of things, when you're not in a thriving metropolitan area, you have to work hard to keep your business. You have to work hard to keep folks happy. It's just, there aren't as many opportunities here in these smaller environments. So we're a hardworking people, but we also play really, really hard. I think that we all work so that we can take advantage of living in this area, so that we can take our kids skiing on the weekends, and we can get out on the boat and go fishing, and we can, take a week in the fall to go hunting and hiking and camping in the summertime. And I mean, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find people in Montana who don't take advantage of those things. Otherwise, why would you live here? It can be really harsh. I saw a meme online, or someone sent it to me one time earlier this winter when it was, negative 30 degrees. And it's, why would I live somewhere where the air hurts my face? And it's true. Well, because we get to take advantage of all of those other wonderful, wonderful things. And we're so fortunate. Really, we are. So it's, come and visit. you'll like it. And then here's what happens. Typically people come and visit in the July, August, September timeframe when it's just perfection here. And then
Mm-hmm.
they all move. Yeah, they move in. And then they live through a winter and then they call Flathead Electric and they're like, what did you do to my heating bills? Did you raise the rates? Nope, that's what it costs to heat your home in the winter in Montana. So but again, like I kind of already alluded to, having affordable rates really allows all of that to keep happening, because wages are not very high here in this state either, because of some of those things I already mentioned. So having that access to that affordable power is just critical to keeping our communities thriving and moving. We are fortunate to be seeing some new business types come in, and they're here, partly they are able to be here because of access to power. So especially like our manufacturing sector, right? Big users of power, and also big providers of jobs and growth and economy for our local areas. So yeah, thank you, hydropower, for letting them come and letting them stay.
Yeah, certainly. And at least the ones that can handle their face hurting in the wintertime.
That's right.
Yeah. But
And one of the funniest things, I have to share a little story here, but early in COVID, when we were masking up and all of that, my daughter, it was the middle of the winter, and she said she was really appreciative of the masks during the winter, because when we walk into the grocery store and stuff, she kept her face warm. Yep, as we're walking through these blizzard-like conditions and biting cold, she's like, "This is nice." Oh, too funny.
I can understand that. I mean, when we had the wildfire smoke here during, it must have been what, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember now. We had some real bad fires, right here in the area, and I remember thinking like, yeah, this mask thing kind of. I mean, it's not keeping the smoke out, but it does at least kind of like take the bite out of the air a little bit. The smell's not quite as intense. So.
I should mention, we get those too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's we really do live here for sort of those perfect days and months, and we take advantage of them when we get them, because otherwise you've got some of that bitter cold to deal with in the winter. And then man, I'll tell you, the last decade or so, it's just the fire seasons have been horrible, and we tend to spend a lot of August, late August and September, kind of engrossed with the smoke from either our area or other areas outside of ours. And that's been tough too, because man, those are the reasons we live here, for those
Yeah.
months. So
Yeah, it's I mean, when we talk about extremes over here, and even in our communication as an organization, and we're talking about we get a cold day, or I guess kind of a cold snap where, maybe the span of a few days it's below freezing. It's not necessarily, even down to zero or anything like that, but we're down in the teens and maybe see a little bit of single digits, or we've certainly had our fair share of some nasty fires, and those couple heat dome events that happened that pushed us way up into triple digits. But oftentimes our extreme weather, our extreme kind of circumstances here are kind of in this maybe narrower range, whereas opposed to looking at Montana, you start to get kind of into those negative temperatures, and things can get a little more intense than maybe what we're used to. And obviously there's challenges that come with that, as we've been talking about for the co-op side of things. I mean, what do those challenges look like in trying to make sure, whether it's wildfire and transmission lines, or whether it's those cold negative temperatures that really push maybe the envelope of energy usage for everyone trying to heat their homes and things. I mean, how does Flathead deal with that as a kind of way of keeping life operating and working there?
well, we really take, for one thing, we really take outage communications very, very seriously for those reasons. That's one of the things have been very focused on for my full tenure here, is how do we more effectively reach people during power outages and make sure that they have the information that they need to keep themselves safe, like literally alive in some cases, right? When you're dealing with the kind of cold temperatures that we deal with. So we've taken a really aggressive approach with our outage communications. We want members to, this is kind of my mantra, but we want our members to have the information that we know as soon as we know it, right? And that's really ultimately all they want either. We just want to know what you know when you know it from an outage communication standpoint. So why is my power out? And we tell them, we give them those causes. When do we expect it to be on? We do our best to prioritize estimated time restoration so that they can plan. If they've got livestock, if they need to leave their home, if they have pipes freezing, that they can do some additional planning. If they need to find backup power, we work with our members to make sure that they've got backup power, and make sure that they're installing generators safely and correctly, and try to serve as a resource for them there too. And then, obviously on the operations side, our planning is all about how to keep our system reliable, where we can put lines underground, where we can do more right-of-way work. We have a very robust operational plan to look at 10 years out what our system looks like and how we can keep the power on. It is really difficult. We have last night I was listening to my phone ding as we had outages rolling in, because we had a totally unexpected windstorm. That was, we just kind of, we say in Montana, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, because 2 hours before that windstorm rolled in, I was out on a 5-mile bike ride with my family, and all of a sudden I looked up at the sky and I'm like, pedal faster, kids. We gotta get home. So it's and we live in a very heavily treed area too. That's part of the beauty of Northwest Montana, is there's mountains and trees everywhere, which makes right-of-way work really difficult, and wildfire mitigation work really difficult. But we've really just focused on that to do to the best of our abilities to try to just keep things as reliable as possible. And then, on the extreme cold stuff, we also are concerned about resource adequacy. So we hit an all-time system peak on December 22nd of this year during that cold snap. And then we're worried about looking at transmission constraints coming into our area, and how do we plan for that in the future, and do we have the capacity that we need, and how can we make sure that we can keep power on in the future. So a whole host of things, but all on the radar.
We're going to get into the resource adequacy here. One thing I do have to ask, before we transition off the topic of challenges, and I personally have to ask, I don't know, I hope maybe some of our listeners will appreciate me tossing this out here, but, one of the other things that's maybe a little bit more extreme about Montana would be that, compared to some of our wildlife here, you guys have got elk, moose, grizzly bears, the whole gamut there. When it comes to the co-op, and you have employees that are out in the field doing various work, are there any fun stories that you could share about encounters? I mean, are there any challenges that come with having people out there doing maybe outage repair work and things like that, and having to deal with some of the local critters there?
Oh, you mean working on high voltage power lines isn't challenging enough, but you also have to do it in grizzly bear country?
Right.
Yeah. Yes. We have regular wildlife encounters.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of just part of the world of living here. But yes, certainly we've got stories of linemen encountering bears regularly. I saw, thinking of just a quick story. I got a text from a lineman a couple of years ago, that was a video of 2 bucks fighting, and they literally ran into the side of our bucket truck. Ran into it. They were completely, I mean, it is a wild video. I mean, they're just, you know, $2 and they're fighting for, I'm sure, whatever dough is out there. And they're completely engrossed in their fight and clanging. And I mean, I think they were interlocked. I think their antlers were. And I mean, they're just have no idea that there is a bucket truck and a crew of linemen there. They've got blinders on. And yep, smashed right into the side of the truck. So that was pretty crazy. But yeah, we've kind of seen it all. We have lots of challenges with wildlife and keeping the power on too. We've got animals in our lines regularly. I mean, especially smaller animals, but we've definitely seen some challenges there.
Yeah.
And linemen are out there in the middle of the night in the middle of the woods, so they definitely have to watch their backs. But thankfully, we also most of them are very comfortable in that environment because most of us who live here, again, we hike, we hunt, we fish, we know how to take precautions for a lot of those things anyhow. So it's not like it's a uncomfortable situation for us. Most of us partake in those types of activities here.
Yeah, so, just part of the lifestyle.
Part of the lifestyle. That's right.
So
maybe they can, maybe they can repair an outage and then do a little hunting while they're out there. I don't know.
Yeah, at least kind of do a little scouting. Get a feel for maybe.
I'm certain they're doing some scouting.
Oh yeah.
I am certain of that.
Just taking a little bit of a mental note. Yeah.
I would be, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, before we get too off topic, let's talk hydropower. So, so what, in terms of everything that we've talked about leading up to this, what is the value of hydro to Flathead and the community and kind of, Western Montana as a whole? We think of Northwest hydropower, the Columbia, all that, but for, that area as well, I understand that hydro is really important.
Hydro is really important. First off, I would say that we have 2 federal hydro projects in Flathead Electric's service area. So we have both Hungry Horse Dam and Libby Dam served by Flathead Electric, interestingly. And so, having hydro generation in our backyard is kind of part of just the area in general. Certainly we appreciate the other things that come along with that, recreating on Hungry Horse Dam and what comes along with that. But, we're also, I think, have a little bit more of an awareness of it because it's in our backyard. But we also have and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we also have a really heavy reliance on it and the benefits that it provides to our community. Our members are really very appreciative of having this carbon-free power. And we hear about that a lot. But the thing that I think is more critical for our area again is that affordability and that reliability. I think quite literally that Western Montana would not look the way it looks without that resource, without that affordable power, because power costs are such a big part of all of our lives, our power usage, electrical usage, especially in the rural areas. So, and then we already kind of touched on the reliability and why that's so critical. A lot of our members have backup power, have generators, because it's that critical that they can't be at risk of not having it. We actually have, our linemen will tell us that there are areas of our service territory that, like rural areas, that they'll drive into and they can't tell if the power's on or not because all the houses have lights on because everybody has installed a generator because they deal with the elements and can't really afford not to have that power. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I think again, it's what our communities are built on and have come to rely on. And we're trying to help our members understand what a great resource it is and how delicate this resource is, even if they don't fully grasp that it's part of what our community was built on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times it's taken for granted that we have this access that we have and this resource that we have, and because we've had access to it for so long, and so that's part of what we try to do is help educate them that how fortunate really we are in this area. We also have a lot of people here have been here for a long time. We've talked about the growth and the tourism and the new people moving in, but most people who have been here, like myself, for generations, that's a large chunk of our community, and they haven't lived somewhere else, so they haven't experienced what it is to pay an electricity bill outside of Western Montana. And so there's that other component of educating them on really how great we have it with access to the federal Columbia River power system, and what it's done for them in their lives, and why they should be making sure that we're protecting that access. I think that's the other piece that we've tried to focus on in our communications.
And it did also, as we were talking earlier about the communication around outage communications and really bolstering that. The wheels start turning in my head like, well, gosh, it's got to be a challenge when people come in, maybe let's say in August, and they're new to the area, and they're maybe not ready for necessarily what's coming in the wintertime. And you have to make that connection and be able to, get in front of them and say, hey, this is what you need to be prepared for. This is, the things that you should be doing now so that when those times do come, you're ready. But I would think that there's probably also some challenge that does come with reaching those people and saying, hey, by the way, this hydropower stuff is really important to us too. And this is why, the rest of us are kind of on board, and why we hope that you'll get on board as well.
The people coming into the area get it a little bit more because they've paid electric bills elsewhere. It's interesting. They're not prepared for how high their bills will be in the winter, but they do appreciate the access to low cost electricity that we have in our area a little bit better than the folks who have been here for many, many, many years, but who probably rely on it more than some of the new folks coming in, because we're seeing the influx of people coming who are a little bit better off financially and kind of able to adjust to those swings, and really the folks who've been here for a very long time who are having some more of the trouble keeping up with the financial burden that our growth is putting on them. We're watching really carefully because the prices of everything are rising so quickly, especially I already touched on housing, especially housing, but everything, right? I mean, everybody's dealing with that inflation, and although we've been able to keep our rates really stable and well below below inflationary costs for our members, they're still having a harder and harder time paying their bills because everything else is so much more expensive here, especially their homes.
It's an interesting perspective, but it does, as you're describing it, it makes a lot of sense actually, that people coming from maybe other areas would go, gosh, this is really nice. I really enjoy, at least even if there are some dramatic swings, at least I enjoy that there's, some benefit to having those cheaper rates, and when you don't have to use a lot of energy, you can really enjoy that. Maybe you could elaborate. I think it's. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it. I think that, again, the power cost piece becomes more critical for the people who haven't moved in here than at that point, who are already shouldering a lot of the cost of the growth. And again, that comes with its positives and its negatives, but these folks aren't the ones who caused it. Especially I look at some of our older folks who are on fixed incomes, and we're a fairly old area, actually, interestingly. A lot of the people who are moving here are retirement age. A lot of the people who have stayed here forever and ever are retirement age as well. And so many of them are fixed income, and they were the folks who really built these communities. They're loggers and the farmers and the ranchers, and they're having to shoulder this cost of of this growth that they didn't cause. And so that's, we're very focused on not having electricity costs be one more thing that they have to be burdened with. It's created some challenges for sure.
Yeah, and I think that ties into where I kind of wanted to go next, and maybe you could elaborate on this a bit more. There's a strong interest for Montana and from co-ops like your own, and what happens with the hydropower resources that are located further west out here more towards us. Maybe like I said, could you elaborate on where that interest comes from, and why people maybe connect the dots for people who don't quite understand why people in western Montana would be really interested in the hydropower issues that are happening in Washington and Oregon and places like that.
They all will directly impact us, right? Because we share these resources as a region. And so, we're especially worried about those last bits of resources that help keep the system reliable and affordable, because we're the ones who really, really need those pieces. We're the ones who need, during those extreme events that the lower Snake River dams, to keep the lights on for our members. It's critical for us. And to keep those costs just a little bit more affordable, it's critical for us. And I mean, you're right, it's hard to understand why somebody sitting in western Montana cares about a dam sitting in eastern Washington, but we're all connected, not only literally by the river system, but also by this electric grid that we all share. And so we've been able to, I think, fairly effectively make that connection for people of why that matters to us. And we've worked really hard to do that through our outreach and through our education and through our communications, to say really ultimately everything that's happening from a power and energy policy standpoint in Washington and Oregon is directly impacting Montana, whether we make those decisions or not. So it is an impact.
And, one of the things that comes up a lot for us is that, we talk about with certain dams being removed or not removed, that there's this possibility of a rate increase that could take place as a result of that. That it's hard to pinpoint, because when we're communicating, we're talking about an entire region, right? And so it's going to affect everybody differently. But there's this up to 25% number, and then there's kind of this like or more component of like, hey, it could go over 25%. It just depends on where you are and how much your utilities tied into power coming from those dams and everything like that. But the other part of that's I think equally, if not more important, is to really understand that, say, raising rates 25% in your area impacts people differently than it does maybe somewhere else, in the greater Northwest. I mean, if people are already struggling with the cost of living going up, if they're struggling with housing prices, if you're talking about all these other components, and then you go, hey, by the way, your bill might go up another 25%. And certainly if we're talking about the wintertime especially, it sounds like 25% could be a pretty substantial amount of money when you're trying to heat your home at that point in time. So
could be detrimental.
Yeah. So, when people think about that, maybe, let's say here in our area where I'm recording today, 25% on, I don't know, let's say $100. Okay, 125. I got $25 more, whatever. I don't want to, but it's not a huge number, right? But if you're talking about, let's say, a $500 power bill and you add 25% to that, it's a pretty big number.
It's a pretty big number for folks, and it's a very delicate balance to find here, because we have people here too who are like, well, raise my rates a little bit to, for some of these other things. That's great. I don't mind at all. And then we have a large sector of our members who it would just cripple them. I mean, we are trying to keep in an area with rapid growth and rapid increases in prices and not rapid increases in salary. We are trying to keep teachers here and service workers and law enforcement and some of the things that we have to serve this growth. It's really, really difficult for folks to stay here and afford to live here. So yeah, it does matter. And the folks who, like I've mentioned, have been here for a long time and are on fixed incomes and didn't cause this growth and didn't make policy decisions that impact the costs. And it's tough. And it is a little bit tougher in this area, I think, than other parts of the region for some of those reasons we've already discussed. We have our own particular set of challenges. So.
And I recently saw a documentary on a kind of like they described it as a ghost town in Alaska, which would be a little bit more rural place compared to nice urban Western Washington here, but it wasn't truly a ghost town in the sense it was abandoned, but there wasn't a lot of people left in the area, and it is it's a different picture, right? You have a lot of growth happening. This place was obviously seeing sort of a negative growth taking place. But one of the challenges they describe is that things like cost of living, things like, the challenges of trying to make that work, you get the people that are kind of in that bracket you're talking about where they're older, they're retired, they're, kind of in, some of those later generations. It makes it hard for the younger generations, the people you're describing now, like the teachers, the people in the community to stay there. And so over time, it's like, well, yeah, that older generation continues to get older and eventually kind of starts to phase out. And then what happens when you don't have anybody left to do the work to keep the community going, right? So, there's a lot of value in making sure that everybody can make it work and continue to be a part of the community.
Yep. And it's a major challenge that we're facing right now. It is a major challenge. So we're seeing teachers having to leave the area. And I say, but then who will teach the children? It's tough.
Right. Yeah. So that kind of ties in as well to, you touched on the Lower Snake River Dam specifically. And as I understand it, Montana's legislature is considering passing is it a bill? Is it a resolution? I want to make sure I'm clear.
It's a joint resolution.
Okay.
Yep, it's a joint resolution against the removal of the Lower Snake River dams that the Montana legislature actually has now passed. It was just sent to enrolling, so we're waiting on that to be signed by the leadership in both chambers. And I think it's a really important statement for Montana to make that at this time we don't support any discussions about the removal of those dams. We're just not at a point where that makes sense, and we have some important stakes to think of in those discussions. So I'm really, really pleased that we were able to work with our friends in the legislature there and help educate that group on the importance of those projects and some of the concerns that we have in the region coming up in terms of resource adequacy and affordability of power. We were able to, I will say that the resolution received strong bipartisan support, which we were very, very pleased to see. It's not a party lines issue in the state of Montana, or I don't think really in the region completely either. But we were really pleased to see that coming out of the Montana legislature.
Certainly, and obviously we were as well here, and it's good to see maybe some balancing taking place in terms of different perspectives on how we should manage those resources and what our take as a region is going to be on their future moving forward. For people in the area, for people Montanans that want to continue to see their rates be affordable, continue to see little to no impact on their lifestyle, as far as how energy resource adequacy cost is going to, play a role in that. Are there things that people can, or I don't want to be too bold in saying should, but are there things that people can or should be doing, as far as whether it's being supportive of hydropower, being supportive of their local, the co-op, the utilities, what can people do to kind of be an active participant?
Well, Austin, I will be so bold as to say should. I hope I we've really tried to encourage our members to get educated on these issues that really do directly impact them. I think that folks should understand where their power comes from as we enter into a time of limited resources and greater concern about reliability. I think that we have a responsibility to be better educated on those issues and to understand some of those challenges and to be a voice on shaping policy that impacts those things. I mean, I think we've been able for a long time to just rely on the hydropower system and the benefits that come with it and not had to think much more about it. And that's just not where we're at today. So we really have tried to work with our members to help them be involved and educated on the issues and to take a really fair look at the future. And, we want to make sure that they understand if we are looking at increased rates in the future, that they know why. And that they feel like Flathead Electric did everything that we could to help avoid that for them, to keep them safe, both physically safe and economically safe, and that they felt like they could have a voice in doing that same thing. Has really been a focus of ours. So, we encourage members to take part in learning and talking with co-op employees and attending annual meetings and talking with legislators and being part of the solution. I mean, ultimately, we are going to have to come together as a region and figure out how to address these issues, and keeping in mind the places that are really impacted, like little Western Montana over here, because we've got major impacts. And I mean, frankly, I would also say we have a lot of regional reach out of our little service area too. I mean, we've got some thriving businesses, especially on the manufacturing sector, that have, I mean, not only regional reach, but global reach. I mean, I would point out that we serve Applied Materials here in Kalispell, and they're a global leader in semiconductor microchip manufacturing. And the facility here in Kalispell that we serve manufactures the equipment used to make those chips, which are used in lots of different areas, including PV technology. So it's important that we keep those things going and operating and operationally viable with the power that they rely on from the hydro system. So a lot of interesting ties to the rest of the region, I think, from Northwest Montana that folks or Western Montana that folks might not think about.
Definitely, and I'm sure people are at least a little bit familiar in this post-COVID world with things like the importance of those semiconductors. I know there's been a lot of talk about that, and chip shortages and things like that. So there is a lot to consider there, but we certainly appreciate not only Flathead the co-op, but the membership itself, being one of our own members here at the organization, and the work that everyone has done there, and we really as an organization, our voice is only as strong as really the people we represent and their own voices. And so we've been really glad to see that there's been so much support there, and it's been really crucial in making sure that we can continue to have access to these resources and and have a strong hydropower system that can make life affordable and doable for all of us.
Yeah, likewise, Austin, we really just appreciate the Northwest River Partners team and you and Kurt, and so glad that we've got you as partners and helping in this really complex and challenging future that we're all trying to have the best Pacific Northwest that we can. And it's delicate and it's challenging, and we're glad to have you guys as a voice, and glad to be supportive of the organization. So
Appreciate that. So, we've covered pretty much a lot of the ground today. We've really gotten everything in, from grizzly bears and line workers to resource adequacy. So I'd say it's a pretty successful podcast in terms of getting all the topics in. But there's one more thing that we always do here, and I don't know, have you listened to any of the previous episodes we've done at all?
I have.
All right. So you might know what I'm about to do and put you on the spot for, but we try and give everybody an opportunity here at the end to have the floor and really, speak from the heart, so that our listeners get to know the person, and really get to take kind of a message away from every podcast we do. So I ask everybody if they have any good advice that you can leave us on, anything that unrelated or related to today's discussion. If there's a little word of advice you want to give our listeners, and give them something to close out on.
I think I would leave you with, well, I'll start by just telling you I'm a fairly optimistic person. Okay, I'm an optimist. And one of the things that I've learned about myself from others who I've worked with is that apparently I like to find the opportunities in every challenge. And I don't know if that I have a real inspirational quote or anything to leave you with, but I would just encourage all of us to, we have a lot of challenges coming up in this industry. And I think with each of those, if we can look for the opportunities to come together, look for the opportunities to find common ground, and try to learn a little bit more about each other in the process, I think we'll be all right. So find the opportunities in those challenges, because they exist.
Absolutely. And I think too, it's worth saying that there's a lot more common ground here on some of these issues than maybe it's made out to be. So I hope that maybe through this podcast or through other opportunities that we can find a way to make that happen. So I especially appreciate that advice. It hits home for me, at least. So
yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much, Austin, for having me on. I hope you will come and visit us. We've got lots to offer.
That's the plan. I need to make more of a point of it than just making the drive through a little corner to get over to Yellowstone. And even then, I've only done that once. So it's time to change that. I've been a lot of places and somehow just managed to not make that one happen. So yeah,
Man, yeah, you got to do Yellowstone and Glacier. You have to get both of the parks while you're here. Glacier's in our backyard, so I'm partial to that one, but and not Yellowstone, the TV show. Holy cow, has that driven some
oh, I can only
dollars.
imagine.
It's good, but also people. Wow, yeah. Every time a new episode of Yellowstone comes out, the realtors' phones start ringing here. Literally, I'm not kidding.
I can only imagine. I haven't actually seen an episode of it, but I know there's quite a bit of hype around it. So yeah, I'm sure that's driving up. And I don't know. I don't even know if they, having not seen it, I don't know if they film on location, but I'm sure that whatever is being presented on TV is probably not maybe the most accurate description of reality. I could be wrong. I don't know. I maybe need to see an episode before.
A lot of it is filmed in Montana, and it's gorgeous. But we do like to remind people that most of it's filmed in Wyoming. So maybe try there.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's
Yeah.
a lot of room. There's a lot of room there. The population's a little lower. Why don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making the time for this. I really appreciate it, and I think we had a really good discussion as always. I don't think I've ever not felt that way about a single episode we've done so far. So we'll keep that streak going, and I appreciate you being a part of it.
Thanks, Austin. Talk to you later.
Well, I can confidently say I learned a lot through this one, and even though Katie is no stranger to us here at River Partners, it was great to hear her perspective on a whole host of topics today. Not to mention all the great messages she had to share, including the value of things like communication and optimism. And of course, the value of hydropower. As always, I hope you learned something today too. For example, if you're thinking about moving to Montana anytime soon, maybe take a trip there in the wintertime before you pack up all your belongings and head out. Alright, on to the housekeeping. This is my time to remind you to subscribe to the podcast on whatever listening platform you're using right now, so you don't miss out on future releases which arrive every other Friday. I believe there's also a notification bell you can tap on, and that will provide you with a notification letting you know when new episodes arrive if you forget that they're coming out every other Friday. And as always, we want to hear your feedback, so leave us a review on that same listening platform. If you give us a 5-star rating and say nice things, you can help other people find and enjoy DAM, and we greatly appreciate that. As always, though, keep it honest and don't do it just because I told you to. Now, if you're all caught up on episodes of DAM and you just can't satisfy your craving for more hydropower, you can always find us on social media at NW River Partners and head to our website, nwriverpartners.org. Until next time, see ya!